Tersinggung. Yes indeed, pleasant good night to all and sundry, and this is Sunday edition, 9th edition of course, of the Corridor Transformation. And I want to say up front that we had a wonderful time this morning. Of course, we weren't able, of course, to get you on Facebook. However, tonight I think is a different story because, of course, I was drilled, I was examined, I was, of course, almost intimidated to make certain that I prepare myself to understand how to, of course, engage and to crank up the various platforms. As I always said that the learning curve has always been sharp, I expected that, but I had to spend a lot of my time that I would have preferred to spend elsewhere or had the opportunity to spend elsewhere to, of course, make certain that we are on both YouTube and Facebook. And of course, that has been accomplished tonight. It was not, of course, accomplished this morning because of some technical glitch, not of the system, but of myself. I want to say too that maybe people can tell me if they are getting static because on the other system that I am looking at the program, I've seen, of course, some static, so I don't know if it's the internal connectivity system or the computer itself in the studio, the other computer that is, of course, creating the problem because of the load that it has on it right now. Because, you know, I have to prepare my bundle for the courts as far as Dr. Rowley's pre-action protocol letter that I issued to him, and of course by Tuesday, Wednesday for the latest, if I don't get the response from his lawyers or himself, I will of course be pursuing legal action through the courts. So that particular computer is saturated, it is overwhelmed with, of course, the amount of documentation that has to be put together, and then, of course, at the end of the day, bind in such a way so as to make it presentable according to the rules established to, of course, file documents in relation to court matters in Trinidad and Tobago. Yes, indeed.
I trust that alien talk is now ceased. Let me just check on mine and see. Yes, indeed. As I said that All right, let's go straight, of course, to the line. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Lennox, good night.
Welcome to the
corridor. Is that it's very distorted. We are not understanding anything that you are saying.
All right. Has that been corrected now?
Well, I'll have to go back and listen.
Okay.
Everybody's calling me.
All right.
That is very, very distorted. All right. I'll call you back and let you know.
Yeah, because I think I had remedied that. I don't know if it has been total. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Right. Yes. Bram. Let's see. Is better now? Oh, yeah, good. I think I got the technique. It's something to do with some connection. Maybe I don't know, but it's a connection problem that I need to firmly test before we get on. So I trust that we are in fact much more audible. I am much more audible at this time. But let me say that I really appreciate what transpired this morning. I want to thank Dr. Khalid as usual for his dedication, commitment. He don't have to do that, and he does it religiously whenever he's called upon by yours truly so to do. So I want to thank him for that. But I was making the point that there is another computer in the studio that I use for other things rather than the live, in order, of course, to get my work done. And I was saying that I am seeing some static on that, but I did not put on the volume, or I should say the audio. So I wasn't hearing, but I was seeing, because that is how it is set up. So I merely disengage the volume, or should I say disengage the plug for the volume, in order to hear what you are hearing, because if I don't do it, it means therefore I will be disturbing through the microphone what I would like to say and what you would like to hear from me, or what I'm trying to project to you. Or indeed, when you call in, we may be getting a difficulty as well. Of course, it's something that is a work in progress, I must confess, and that I need, of course, to get more practice in order to, of course, at least achieve a level, not necessarily perfection or perfect, but at least a level that is appropriate. Okay. Yeah, so my assistant has indicated to me that things are back to normal. Last night, of course, that what somebody call a ghost voice or a horror story voice or something of that nature. But of course, tonight I've been able to quickly address that, simply because I had the experience from last night. You see, experience is the best teacher, and let's face it. And in those circumstances, I mean, you can't vex with anybody for that. That being as it may, of course, let's go straight, of course, to the line. We always give way to you. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor, the night edition. A pleasant good night.
A pleasant good night to you, Lennox Smith, and everybody on the live near and far.
Yes.
Well, I know come out of the Zoom meeting in our church, and just when I come out of the Zoom meeting, now I realize a friend of mine calling me on WhatsApp. And she telling me, she see, you see the same thing I was telling you? I tell you, OS went bankrupt. I look now on the TV talking right now. What is the thing? Well, we must be talking right now. I tell you, OS thief money from the children to the so when I go on and I listen to him and I see that I'm on the TV. I say, I know what's going on. Yeah. Mark them had a press conference today, and they started bring out evidence that Carl Enberg is the one who awarded ODS contract. Because in the early days, people used to be saying, it's Japuana when he was FIFA vice president, and he went down to Brazil and he made some deal with ODS. And now it's about documents circulating on Facebook showing you it's underneath Manning's administration, ODS, they awarded the contract. So I didn't know what it is Rowley doing on the TV right now, but he trying to create some kind of damage control somehow, but he well dancing and getting on the TV right now, you know.
You sure that is live, or is it when he was down in the opening of that segment of the highway? Just confirm that.
The person called me and tell me about the man talking on the TV right now. One listen to. And when I went on TVT, they really seen. So I don't know if it's a pre-broadcasting, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But they have it streaming on TV right now. But I don't know if it's a live broadcast or a pre-recording. But the man dancing and getting on the TV right now.
All right, good.
And I call him back the person now, tell her she know, hey, them people, UNC did a conference this morning, and Rowley trying to do damage control. I know she said and she phone. She know what time she phone I call her, she back tell her she know what transpired today. But she so insists that OAS thief so much of millions of dollars. I said OAS thief so much of money. How come so much of the highway was done? If the thief money, when a thief something, he doesn't leave nothing behind. So I don't know then definition of thief is something else. I don't know. So Lennox,
yes, yes, indeed. Boy, I got some little challenges here. The other monitor, I'm not getting access to it. So you're getting something in the background that was earlier a problem. Oh my goodness. All right, I know what I'll do. All right, good. All right, so let me see if I can get rid of that. Oh my goodness. Just give me a little moment, please. Let me just clear up that that robot-like voice that you're hearing, delayed, of course, on the other platform. Oh my goodness! Why is it so loud? Are you hearing it? I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll close down that particular system. Let me just put this in place, and I will do what I have to do. Just give me a moment. I trust that alien talk is now seen. Let me just check on mine and see. Yes, indeed. As I said, that the. All right, let's go straight, of course, to the line. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. All right, now I'm back. I got that matter fixed. A little technical, but I got it fixed, so you wouldn't be hearing that in the background from here. It was disturbing to me as well. All right, okay. So the Prime Minister, of course, in his usual, what I consider to be mendacious and prevaricative mood, you know, he has those what I consider to be a very schizophrenic and bipolar, and at the same time deliberate attempts at fooling the people. He reminds me of a toddler, frankly. Dr. Rowley reminds me of a toddler. A toddler that is persistent because they don't know better. So when you ask them, if you put maybe a plate of food on the table, they gravitate to grab at it, not knowing the danger. But in Rowley's case, he has the attitude of a toddler of that nature, but deliberate. Rowley cannot be serious when he comes in 2023 at that leg, opening of that leg of the highway, and talk that kind of hogwash, deliberate deception. It's not innuendo, you know. Innuendo is a misleading statement that may have some element of truth in it. The man is a consummate liar. He is wicked, and he reminds me of a toddler that is persistent in engaging in danger, because the only benefit that could come out of his continuous mendaciousness and his prevarications, his lies, his mythomaniatic nature. He's habitually lying, and sometimes for no reason, but that is his nature. As we know, similar to his proclivity, his propensity, his predilection for doing, acting, and speaking evil. So he goes down there knowing full well that the collapsed piece of highway that Jusamco constructed, a company that from the commencement of the construction of Balize House, about 2 years ago, the car park that is now, of course, a commingling of steel, cement, bricks, mortar, etc., and was pouring concrete. Joe Shamko was pouring concrete on the basement, and Rowley went up to Constantine Park on the final leg of the local government election campaign and told us in no uncertain terms that not a company engaged by the government worked on Balize House, trying to justify the unjustifiable, because questions are being asked even now about where they get the money from. He publicly telling us in 2015 that the PNM was in effect bankrupt, not OAS. Is the PNM was bankrupt, and he has to say where they get the money from to construct that 5-story monstrosity that is going up on Balize grounds. That is what he has to focus on, because nothing he says about others, in an attempt, of course, to promote his own political viability and electability, but always succeeds in making people hate him more. And I take note of the caller's concern about a particular individual who has been engaged in or engaging on attempting, of course, to placate and to somehow give relevance and credence to the Rowley administration and the PNM in general. You see, there are those, as I keep saying, there are people who are so blind, even if they can see 20/20 vision, and there can be no greater individuals like them. But of course, since they are so damn blind, it is said that in blind man country, one-eye man is king, and Rowley represents one eye. That one-eye man, he's king, because all of them who are still hanging on to that dribble, to that continuous imagination and the exhaustion of the elasticity of their presence and tolerance of and by the people of Trinidad and Tobago. They cannot survive with that nonsense. Why am I saying all of that? He gave at that launch a fleeting historical assessment or analysis of the highway to Point Fortin project. Yes, he was correct. It is the most expensive undertaking by the Trinidad and Tobago government. He then talked about, of course, the Manning administration being involved. Notice he was reluctant in the past to tell us that. In Faizabad, I remember very distinctly in the campaign of the PNM in the 2019 local government elections, he went into Faizabad and he went and he washed his ugly, nasty, Kobo-like, toxic, putrid tongue on the UNC, suggesting that somehow they engage in corrupt act. But I want you to understand, because I'm going to play it for you tomorrow. I don't have it tonight. But I could have anticipated what he would have said then, because we have cleared up that matter a long time ago. But Rowley will persist as that little toddler who will, of course, gravitate towards and persistently want to pull down a cup of hot water, for example, oblivious to the danger. But Rowley deliberately does that. He reminds me of the propaganda minister of Hitler, in the Nazi regime. What is his name? Goebbels or something like that? Yeah, he reminds me of him. They persist in saying consummate and definite lies in order to promote themselves as something worthy of being considered. And that is what Rowley did again, because he really has nothing to say. The project, he admitted, took more money than expected. It took longer than expected under his administration, and did not disingenuously and reprehensively dishonest. He did not mention the falling of that piece of, and I would have thought that a prime minister with a sense of respect for the population, and in a democracy where there is a fundamental principle of adhering to transparency and accountability, because the money is not theirs, the PNM gets on as though the treasury is their private and personal parlor. We see that, of course, when so many of them would have recused themselves because their friends and family looking for contract and have been given contract at the level of the cabinet, making decisions. All they do, they just walk out as if people are stupid. And it irks me when people cannot understand human nature and how things work. It is a challenge. It is dangerous for citizens not to understand how things work in their own backyard and in their own society that has implication for their survivability, their wealth, their standard of living and quality of life, and their economic prosperity or decadence or destruction. I cannot understand it. But it is a reality, and I have to be pragmatic. So Dr. Rowley goes there, not mentioning about the piece of road that collapsed into the swamp below, and it has significant, and the onus was on Rowley to use the opportunity to tell the people what has transpired. Is it that the government has taken up the responsibility? Is it that the contractor must compensate the taxpayers, you and I, for that piece of road? Is it that the architects and the designers must be part and parcel of compensation because they were given a contract by NIDCO for to do a particular piece of road, and the road collapsed into the swamp below? That is what I expected. So you can identify why Rowley would have, of course, focused on something that clearly, as I said this morning on the corridor transformation, when you are writing it, it's called tautology. Engage, of course, in repetition that would have had and would have been known to recipients of that kind of narrative before, and people like me would be paying particular attention. So I can say to Dr. Rowley, is another case of your despicable, corrupt, nasty, and of course attempted to deflect attention away from your own incompetence, impotence, and your administration's corrupt nepotism and cronyism that has become idiosyncratic and of course stereotypical of this administration. There's no doubt that is the intent, and he will not stop, and that is why I see him as a toddler. But in the case of the toddler, at least is an empty vessel willing to be filled, or is about to be filled by growth and experience, biologically and chronologically. But Rowley is a big hardback old man who went university. So you cannot have any sympathy for him, because he will tell you when an issue like this, why it is that you did not explain why the road fall into the swamp and what is the circumstances that would emerge from that in terms of who paying for it. The little toddler, innocent and of course now experiencing life on earth, but Rowley has had all of that. So it is clear that the intention is again attempting to deceive the people. What are the facts? What are the facts? For the umpteenth time, I will regurgitate, I will repeat. I want to tell you as well that scenario where he continues, of course, to try to deceive the population with that kind of old talk, apart from Hitler's propaganda minister that he reminds me of. And of course I say Hitler because I want you to know that that is the man that caused the Second World War and untold damage and danger and pain and ache and agony to the people, not just of Germany but of the whole world, because it was a world war and all kinds of unnecessary resources had to be deployed and deflected in order, of course, to address that problem. And just as us in Trinidad, the resources we have at our disposal is our finger, and we must show Dr. Rowley and the exit door from government. But let us get back, of course, to the question of the OAS and Rowley's umpteenth attempt. And let me tell you, my umpteenth, and will continue so to do. They could like it, they could lump it, they could ignore it, they could, and Rowley and they could be as irascible and of course angry as possible. They have to take it because it is the fact and it is provable. What he has to say is not provable because it was simply and is simply lies. Yeah, total lies. And it gets you angry, but you must be calm, because you see, the caller mentioned a person who is recalcitrant and will take in a state, of course, of what is called cognitive dissonance, any port for a storm to justify supporting Rowley, and we know on one basis alone you cannot support him and he cannot deny it, and they have not been denying it except to say that Lennox must hush when I call him a rapist and a pedophile. And of course I have taken a legal action to of course clear my name on the subject as far as he is concerned. Cognitive dissonance. They know that the PNM has failed. They know Rowley is a total charlatan, and they know that he is despicable, and they know that every night on the corridor transformation and wherever I get the opportunity, including of course in the courts, I call Rowley a rapist and a pedophile, and he has failed to defend it. Yet still somehow they will ignore that, and I say to them, shame on you. And I will continue to say shame on the PNM woman arm and the youth arm and the entire structure of the PNM to have, of course, a despicable, a parasitic, a predator of multiple dimensions be not only the head of the PNM, but to be Prime Minister in this country today. You will understand. And I am convinced when I came into this daily narrative, I see myself as a practical, pragmatic individual who believe in cause and effect. In other words, I did not believe in superstitious rantings of some people where they can throw a crapo inside somebody's yard and have them do things that they would normally not do, etc., etc., and have people by some kind of amorphous way, without any physical contact, get people to do things. But as I experience and interact and talk about and observe, I have to say yes, that exists. Because why it is just before Rowley went to open that piece of the highway, 2 persons died in crash. 2 persons died, 2 injured in hospital. But more than that, on the same highway, bandits were shooting at police just before Rowley come to open day. And it has happened in other places, in other situations and circumstances involving Rowley and this government. The largest flood that you could ever talk about, especially in a place where you didn't expect it, at least because of the terrain, or maybe the opposite is the case. But the point I'm making is that the flooding in Greenvale, for example, where people were flooded and they were marooned as a consequence on the roofs, they had to go on the roofs, entire building was inundated. And what it turned out to be, Rowley was the Minister of Housing at the time, and his friend was the owner of the land. Actually, it was a lake bed. The alluvial plain, a term well known, of course, to geologists and geographers and the persons who specialize in that area, where a river sufficiently swollen will overflow its banks and then of course inundate the surrounding land. It is called the alluvial plain. Well, Rowley bought not at agricultural cost and without of course approval from the planning ministry. Without the approval as Prime Minister, as Minister of Housing under Patrick Manning, he bought that land from former his friend a former mayor of Port of Spain, yeah, for not agricultural lands, but as residential plots, and he has the audacity to come and talk about Munilal, and of course, and they continue, of course, in their delusionary state, doing what they are asking others or criticize others of doing. They're doing it even more viciously. So a $55 million piece of land was of course bought for $175 million, according to Rowley and they. But it was the government evaluator that evaluated it under the UNC administration when Munilal was Minister of Housing. And Rowley and they would go to town on that. Go to town. They even put, of course, the evaluator, some officer there. But it is clear, just as Rowley would do, they say they're not responsible for crime because it's the police work. So they know that Munilal is not responsible for evaluating land and buying land, even though he is Minister of Housing or was Minister of Housing. Just as Anil Roberts, he wasn't responsible for the nuts and bolts and the rolling out of the live sports program. He provides a policy direction and all of that, but in terms of the nuts and bolts, who must get money, who must be deployed, he may have some what I consider to be peripheral influence. A person, for example, I could see believe that they were, of course, bypassed for reasons that may be questionable in getting a contract. I could see a man putting pen to paper and writing Munilal or writing Anil Roberts and saying, listen, I have been bypassed. These are the documentation. This is the history of the matter. This is the officer who, of course, I was engaged with. And at the end of the day, I feel that I was unjustly treated, and maybe you can look into it. Nothing is wrong with that. That is happening every day under Rowley and them, and most despicably at the level of the cabinet, to where they recuse every day. What do you think that is all about? It is all about somebody who is connected to a minister making an application for millions of dollars of contracts or some kind of benefit, and in that case, all Rowley say is the accepted standard is that they just walk out the room and let their friend and let their colleagues, their ministerial colleagues, make a decision, as if we're stupid. In that particular case, because it is at that level, it means that the person who walked out, whether is Stuart Young, whether it be Alwari, whether it's Rowley himself, they would have had interaction before the matter reached the cabinet for a decision. We are no asses here. We are no fools. But Rowley will try to tell us that the only time they had interaction with the matter that is before them, for which cabinet decision is to be somebody interfere with the system. All right, okay, I see that that the camera is off. I would advise people in the studio not to interfere with the fan or anything like that, because it interfered. It happened yesterday, so I simply have to get it back on stream. It's a good thing I could deal with that one. Please don't interfere with anything at all while the program is going on. All right, so let's see. Let me see how I'm getting back that Bram. Right, good. I think I got it back. Yesterday, sorry about that, but it's a learning curve. Everybody is learning, and of course we have some sensitive equipment close by. There's a fan and so on, and when you touch a particular cable, everything is cable. You know, things happen unexpectedly and inadvertently. So on air, well, you know, I have to read the attack in a sense. But that being as it may, the point I am making is that in human circumstance, Dr. Rowley and they have to be absolutely in a state of cognitive and intellectual decline to believe that when a matter comes to the cabinet, whether it's Stuart Young's brothers organization that has now become, of course, a merchant bank because of the contracts that they would have been given in preference to local banks. The largest bank, of course, is Republic Bank, etc. But they didn't see it fit to hire those entities to, of course, find money, and clearly at higher rates of interest, because when Stuart Young brother gets the contract, he now has to go and borrow from the very banks that the government could have gone to directly and get a cheaper rate so that you and I could be spared. You see the hypocrisy of Dr. Rowley and they, that they want to save and talking taxpayers' money. You must be in a state of ad nauseum and see them for what they are, because that is criminal, that is evil, that is wicked, that is self-serving and meaningless for them. It must also be meaningless for us, except that they have done us an injustice and they must pay for it at the end of the day. We cannot wait, of course, for a general elections. We must not. We must be impatient. Every night we must, of course, tackle them. But let me get back, of course, to the OAS that he mentioned once again. You see, I want to tell you as well that it is not the first time that he will have created such kankata in order, of course, to give himself some kind of credit when credit is not due, when there is no credit to be had. Because at the end of the old talk that he would have given the population by way of that opening, he is preparing us for the possibility that Trinidad and Tobago, you and I taxpayers, may have to pay OAS, the company that was summarily dismissed by Rowley and they, with their fictitious and their evil and malicious scuttling of not paying the contractor, and the contractor pick up their equipment and leave, and took the matter to arbitration, and the arbitrator said that Trinidad and Tobago is responsible for the sudden dismissal or the sudden leaving of the contract, because there is something in contract law called frustration. There's something called, and in all practicality, a principal who hires somebody, let's say, to construct a building, but every minute they're in the tail. And if the contract is to provide the gravel and the cement and so on, and they provided the gravel and the cement, but the contractor is faithfully on the job, or there is an access road that the owner is responsible for in order to get material to reach that house or that building, then the contract has been frustrated by the person who is supposed to benefit ultimately and who has given that contract to the contractor. And so in such circumstance, what the contractor would have lost, the owner had to pay. Well, that is what happened in the arbitration. Rowley and them by their malicious and attempt, of course, to manifest what was not there, the corruption of OAS and the then government of Kamla Prasad Bisesa and the UNC, in attempt to manifest it, in attempt to make it happen, in attempt to, of course, similar to a police officer who charges a person for larceny of some item, but doesn't have the item, but after he charged, he looking for it. Well, that is Rowley and them. That is Rowley and them. They told us all kinds of hogwash on the campaign trail. That the entire thing is corrupt. To talk about Warner, as the caller rightly said, going to Brazil and having some kind of engagement and so on. After all of that, is that relationship, that whether it happened or not, is something that impacts on the corrupt deal that would have been the result of such interaction. Yeah, that's what they said. Corrupt deal. And when they realized that it was not so, they still pursue a course of action to make you and I fools, and to make us believe because they are in charge and they are the government and they are the cabinet, they believe that everything they say, because they are in a position of authority. But there is a kind of authority called abuse of office. There is a kind of authority that talks about misbehavior in public office. You only have to look at where the former minister, ephemeral as it was, of public utilities and housing, Marlene McDonald, why she is where she is today, because of that misbehavior. The same thing, the entire cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, run by Rowley, a total rapscallion, has been engaged in over the last 8 years. Over the last 8 years, they have been engaged in that kind of misinformation, disinformation, criminal behavior, misbehavior in public office, and you can go on and on. Of course, people, of course, the lines are open, so you can, of course, make your contributions. I know that should I say, robot type voice has gone. I'm not seeing. I don't have the benefit of seeing it, so you will have, of course, to communicate with me by way of your comments and so on. But the fact of the matter is that the OAS arrangement was a solid one. The UNC was careful enough to ask, and Rowley has confessed to it. That's what gave me vex, and you must be as well. I will bring the tape tomorrow. Rowley saying that in order for OAS to get the contract, they must put up bonds. That's a clear and definite action to protect the public interests and taxpayers. That was done by the UNC in that arrangement. Rowley knows that. And if he didn't know then when he was talking that hogwash on the campaign trail, he knows now as Prime Minister for sure, and yet still he comes back with that. Understand the toddler nature of this man, totally oblivious to the facts and the truth that he himself would have espoused. So he told us in the past that they put up bonds. And don't get me vexed before I play tonight, you know. And that was a result of the airtight arrangement and insistence by the Kamla Prasad Bisesa administration that started the highway to Point 14. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Our external. Yes.
A pleasant night. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Loud and clear. Loud and clear. Loud and clear.
I now get back onto the program.
All right. Okay. We're gonna fix that. We're gonna fix that.
The program at all. Anyway, Lennox had. Yeah. If I can make a contribution, and according to Jason Miller, I was somewhere at a Robert last night.
All right.
Lennox, what I was saying last night is that Dr. Monilal told that million spent on that inquiry, the inquiry to that highway. Who did the inquiry? Not better.
No, it is not finished. It has not even started. But the announcement was made, and since that announcement, the man collected money for inquiry that is to be. Yeah, that's how despicable and how bold-faced and how ugly these people are, and coming in our faces and talking about integrity and uprightness and paragon of virtue. They are scoundrels. Go ahead.
Who raping and what raping and who doing rape? You understand? UNC raped it. What they doing now? What they did with the procurement legislation letter.
They eviscerated. They eviscerated it. They raped it. Yes, that's a good term as well. I would want to use repeatedly. Yes.
They raped the damn thing, and you only talk about rape. When they were doing the when Rowley was opposition leader, when they had that session that day in Parliament in 2013, March of 2013, when he came out, of the Parliament, he did an interview with Ria Tate of the Express. He said NGC was the gasoline that wasn't used to rape the treasury. You see how far you went to say it? You see?
Yeah, despicable, misogynic,
and
ugly.
Very graphic.
Yeah, ugly.
The man is very graphic. Yes. He talked about raping with umbrella and opening the victim in Masika Park in St. Augustine.
Yeah.
Lennox, I want to know how much that opening, that little piece of how much it costs. Look at the state of the country. You want to tell me that they had to have all that Boko Jumbi and all kind of crap?
And mind you, it's any port for a storm. They have so much poor performance record that they went and reopened the highway in the first place, you know. You remember that? Yeah, they had a big ceremony for that. Reopen it. Existed. They went and cut the ribbon to widen a road in Sagigandi. I mean, it's just despicable, hilarious, and you could swear it's a bunch of Johnny. I want to say.
Want to talk about who raping the treasury?
Yeah.
Who raping it?
Yeah, a bunch of comedian. That's what they are. Comedian.
But Lennox and they still lying. That was the NC government, but it's on the 20th of May, same day Kamala was being they were signing that contract OAS.
Somebody is trying to get in, but please call back after this call, all right? Sorry about that, but I had to disconnect you. Go ahead, Ms. Sanders Cruz.
Yeah, all the many lies are probably told about the clause. And they had to go to any money. This time it was a built-in clause.
That's right. Right, this man reminds. Yeah.
They said only 3% or something like that of the highway was completed, and they spent how much billions of dollars. And the Joint Select Committee, we heard 65% of the highway was completed, and I think it's only 3 billion or something that they had spent.
Yeah, but you know, Dr. Rowley. Yeah.
We come here and we have to put the truth against those lies. Do that. Mrs. Manning mess him up when we went and opened for fort. I tried to create an impression that he was a fight. This is a factor for that. I want to remind him that Manning had to ask money gone. Now, Lennox, I want to say something here tonight.
Go ahead.
And I hope nobody don't take it wrong way or whatever. Now, I always say, when it's a war in a country, it's always the children and the poor and the most vulnerable. They are the ones that suffer most.
Yes, that's a fact.
Lennox, my prayers are with the people involved in that war, right? My prayers were dead. I'm sorry for them. Let's get that out of the way. But country come first. My country come first. We have so much of bloodshed in this country. 4 children died. 4 children got killed. One time and another one in a separate incident. Nobody marched around the savannah to save the children. Nobody. But they were seeing Ancient Ishmael, Fazil Muhammad, and the whole set of them leading a charge to save Palestine or wherever it is. I don't know. Because I don't pay much attention to these things again.
To do what? What was the nature of the charge?
I'm not saying.
What was the nature of the issue? What it was?
To save Palestine.
Oh, I see. Okay, all right.
See, but the concern in the war that's going on.
Yeah, okay, right, yeah, because they are Muslims. Yeah.
Lennox, how many protests that we have for the crime of whatever in this country, and one day these people show up. So apparently, something affects some people more than others. Look at what the black man in America. Everybody down here was protesting Black Lives Matter. Where's the protest for children? And all the innocent people that are being killed, all the information, where's the protest? I will say it again. My feet are good and I am not a hypocrite. Every time a protest is called, I am out there. As you know, I am out there.
Yes, I am very conscious of that. Yes.
I am not a hypocrite if I can't stand for all and not standing. Because my country bleeding. My country bleeding. There are a lot of murders in my country. And very few standing up for it. And to see the certain group, that figure, if they go against the PNM, who the hell put there, it will look as though they're supporting Kamala. But I want to remind them, all they're not supporting Kamala, or supporting all the country, a country that all they're living in. Thanks a lot, Lennox, and have a good night.
Yes, same to you as well. Of course, the caller that was calling whilst the contribution was being made, you are free, of course, to resume. I will take your call as well. But I only want to say that, but wasn't the Palestinians that were the aggressor, that they tried to invade Israel? Are they saying now that, of course, the response was not measured, that it is too overwhelming? But if they didn't, initiate it, I mean, there is a broader issue of the land issue and the Israelis' occupation and all of that. I'm familiar with that, but on this occasion they were the aggressors. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Good night, Lennox.
Good night to you.
Good night to everybody on the live.
Yes, good night to you.
Lennox say we're going on with the call, right? The call sound like if we look up in our room and we talking to your outside and the door lock.
All right.
The audio on the side sounding very, very low.
Very low.
When they cussing in there from a distance with the song.
Yeah.
That's what the audio song and
it's okay like that.
Low.
All right, let me see.
It's only my mouth the song big, eh? It's only my mouth if I cuss in there, but it could be hard. What you going on, Lennox?
Yeah, go ahead.
Lennox, what's going on now? The PNM people are able to buy no ham and no macaroni pie. But Lennox, it looked like the dream coming true because I'm frightened to put up my Christmas tree and my Christmas lights for when the live will come. Yes, Lennox, I'm frightened to even put up a Christmas light. So it might not have Christmas for me to say, but see, them have a macaroni pie. Me know about that. It's libel, but.
All right.
All okay, Lennox.
All right. Let me see if this echo for sure. Let me try. I have to go back to this. I thought I could have remedied it immediately, but it's clear that I have to, of course, keep it as is. I'll talk a little harder if it's necessary, a little louder. But of course, macaroni, and they don't want us. Certainly, this budget does not give any kind of optimism, and of course the level of deceptions that are built in, quite apart from the multiple deceptions that this government seem to strive on and believe that somehow that is sustainable into the future. They have a different thing coming, and I always like to refer, of course, to the Tobago scenario. Is 14-1, and they are yet to recover from, of course, the licks they got in the local government elections in Trinidad. A pleasant good night to welcome to the corridor.
Yeah, pleasant good night, Mr. Lennox.
Good night to you.
I want to good night to everybody live, everybody in chat, everybody regionally, internationally. So, Mr. Lennox, I watch you run your program this morning, right? Our very good program.
Thank you very much.
I see the picture with the gun.
Yes.
So, you telling me millions of dollars worth of guns and nobody not there to protect them? They could afford to fight the police in the camp, whoever they keep that. Why is them people? We have terrorists and gangs have camps in the forest. It seems so, because people ain't gonna take millions of dollars of worth of guns and ammunition and hide it in the bush, in the grass. The gun go seize, Mr. Lennox, the gun go get old.
Are you saying then, as I would not lose sight of, that they were really trying to throw away them thing and them happen to find it? I mean, I saw it as well, and I was, in shock and amazement that them kind of unusable things you want to say is a major fine, and Rowley didn't waste time to say that it threatened national security. In other words, his a coup could have occurred with those rusting items. But go ahead, my friend. I don't want to take any wind out of your sail. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Lennox, so then you see all the police vehicles where they have pack up, and then they can take the old oil and they clean all them old ones and put it up for this. Mr. Lennox, do you feel like could fool people?
I'm telling you, man. And nobody, it was supposed to be intelligence driven and thing. That time, as I didn't even, from the time the news broke, I said, that's a tip off. And in fact, it was so. By accident, somebody happened to talk because they were on another mission. And when they went there, they saw these things and decided, of course, to make it the propaganda that it has turned out to be, to fool the unesoteric. That is to say, those who are unfamiliar. Go ahead, my friend.
Always remember, people, the barracks has been camouflaged. That don't mean it is in the bush. It's just camouflage. So they find it in the barracks and they say they find it in the bush.
All that is possible. All that is possible.
The feeling come out of this what that gonna do for crime? You see, Mr. Lennox, I will always say, Mr. Lennox, you see these kids and them, a lot of single parents and a lot of them are mothers, and they don't have a father figure in their life, and these children are going astray. And number one, a solution, all this money that the Ministry of Education get, start to find single parents children in school and give them counseling and talk to them and find out what is the problem and not all the money that is for education purposes, and you have to have certain activities at school, because this is when they attend 5 to 10 years of their life, and they spend 8 hours to 9 hours to 10 hours a day. And you could have programs and you could elevate these children, and then they don't need, so said 8 years is how much? Close to $70 billion is spent in national education, because how much a year for a year in education? About $8 billion.
Yeah, Eddie, about it's too much not to be concerned about. let's leave it at that, because it's almost incalculable. But go ahead.
True, Mr. Ernst, and these way you have to start to get these children at a young age, Mr. Ernst, from primary school, and find out that what is missing in their life, and find out what is troubling them. And this is the only way we need to overcome crime, because if children go to school and they don't want to lead, and they want to fight, and they want to have only on social media and make the news for likes and for clout, this is the problem we have, and there's a simple solution. Train people to come into the school and counsel these children and find out what is the problem, Mr. Ernst. That's simple. You start from a young age. Thank you very much, Mr. Ernst, and I'm not gonna listen.
Yes, indeed, my friend. Yes, indeed. And you're quite right. There needs to be a comprehensive, and we talked about it, Dr. Khaled and myself this morning, on what is required. And I've always been critical of Dr. Rowley as an exemplar. He has proven over and over that he really and truly is not qualified for the job of Prime Minister. And I want to go as far as to say, even though it would be irking for me to say, not even leader of the PNM. Because when you compare him with other past leaders, whether his recent past or his distant past, I mean, it's chalk and cheese. The man is simply reprehensible. He is a criminal. He is a miscreant. He is one that will engage in brinksmanship. He will take you to the edge, but always in some kind of pernicious circumstance, as indeed he recently addressed. And I want to say, of course, many of those sycophants who, of course, would listen to the hogwash and the deceptions that Dr. Rowley will spew on almost a daily basis, or every time he gets a mic in his face. You know, there are some who, as sycophants, will listen, contrary to probably, or they have not yet reached that stage of reality, as the caller from Point Fortin would have, of course, encounter with that particular individual who was still saying that OAS and the UNC was corrupt in relation to, of course, that highway to Point Fortin. Because I remember very distinctly a fellow called, I think is Corporal. I suspect he is still on, irrelevant as he is, and misinformed or uninformed, maybe a more appropriate term, that he is, and has demonstrated. But I was on a PNM oriented program, one shot, Julia Davies program, and I was there, and they said that the country was running on fumes, and I had to tell them there is a big difference between a country running on fumes, having $5 billion in Heritage and Stabilization Fund, over $10 billion, and therefore, or over 12 months of import that is well within a prosperous country's domain. When you have that kind of monies at your disposal, are talking about in reserve. Let's go straight, of course, to the line. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. No problem.
I say we're going on them guns. I tell you, I see all them guns already over and over in TV. And if not that kind, it's the long black one, the long pointed one. Right?
Yes.
I don't know them when I see them, right?
All right.
People in life might know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But here we're going on,
yeah.
My husband come and I forget what I say there now. Let us talk to remember. He tell me something and I forget what I say.
All right. No problem. I know you'll call back. Yeah. You go ahead.
I don't remember.
Go ahead.
What important? The criminal or the guns? And the criminal, you have to catch first.
Of course,
When the guns remain buried,
because
when they say they find it.
they could always find guns once they get away. They could always continue with their nefarious acts and threaten the security of the country. Yeah.
They were supposed to hold the criminal first and then get the guns after.
So
as we all know, this country back to front, everything wrong side in this country.
no, but it was a desperate attempt to do something because of the outcry of the people, and they punks on that. Any port for a stop. You see how much of there was in the background. I'm going to put up the picture in a while.
If you give all them a lie detector test, we're going to go fail a test on them, boy. Trust me, you know. You ain't seen the lie in the face too. Alexander was stumbling when he talking, like how he stumbled on the guns on them. Stumbling when he was talking.
They stumble on it, that's right. They stumble on it, that's all. It was not anything about intelligence driven. They will embellish it, they will color it up, they will make it sound nice that way to show, well, after all, I mean, they have been taking a beating. Not now, they have always been taking a beating. The reality is that they don't detect people. Yeah, they don't detect crime, and they have very poor success as far as prosecution and conviction is concerned. So
okay, now good night.
Yes, that's the difficulty there. So let me just share with you, of course, the people who have been the bane of our problems. Let's go so you are clear, especially for the children. I want the children to know the people who are engaged in their future sufferings and the present sufferings of their parents. They need to know these are the people who have been in office for too long and have been, of course, for 8 years, and if they continue a maximum of 10 years, they have done untold damage. So these are the people for the young folks that are looking on. So when you see them in the jacket and tie, know that these are the people, and of course in their expensive dresses and so on, these are the people who have been doing us untold damage to Trinidad and Tobago, and your future in absolute and total jeopardy as a consequence of their presence in the offices that they hold, which give them access to the treasury and the state apparatus, all of the institutions of the state. That is a dangerous group. They are toxic, they are evil, they are a mafia syndicate, and they are criminals in their respective domains, led by, of course, a total miscreant called Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. That being as it may, let me conclude, of course, the question of the OAS matter. So I gave the example with respect to someone who you have contracted to construct your home, and they frustrate, of course, the contractor. The contractor has a right, of course, to make a claim saying that it's your fault that I didn't finish, and therefore the difference, give me it, and of course the court will make the appropriate judgment. Well, that occurred in England, where, of course, OAS took the government to court, arbitration, and the arbitration said that the government of Trinidad and Tobago was at fault, and therefore the $1 billion that he said that he got now has to be given back to OAS with interest. Guess what? They're so mad, they come to the local court to try something that everybody agreed it should be at the level of the arbitration. I don't know how the local court come in, but the matter has been delayed in terms of Trinidad and Tobago paying OAS that $1 billion. Let's go straight to the lines. A pleasant good night.
Hey Lennox, pleasant good night to you again.
Yes.
I sent something for you now on today again.
Well, I didn't take a look, but I'll certainly do that tonight after the program.
But it's long, but I will not play for you and everybody else. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. No problem. Yeah.
Because this is causing so much pain.
That's all. I'm going to bring it from the beginning. That's all.
I have an expert to come in. I'm like, because this is causing so much pain. Yeah, and diarrhea. This is causing so much pain. And gastrointestinal
You understand? You understand what we're doing, Lennox?
Whose voice is that? Whose voice is that?
You can guess whose voice is that?
Im Smith.
Yeah.
Right, good. Okay. I just wanted to confirm it was a bit finer than normal, but I think it was sufficiently distinguishable. Yeah, but that is the predilection they have for evil. That is how they think of the population and believe that we are fools. They have not yet analyzed and accept that in Tobago the 14-1, neither of course the 60-something thousand people more voted for the UNC. They believe that they could always come back because they have something that is pernicious that they could concoct and get the population to pass at least 21. That is all they want. 21. So if they get 21 seats, they get government and then of course act as though they get a landslide. That is the kind of. But I want to say on the other hand, Kamala Prasad-Bisesa, they are up to the task because of course we saw that in the local government and how they cause it to be constructed. They are in fact the government. We saw the real budget being presented by Kamala Prasad-Bisesa in her response to what clearly is a bogus and of course I consider to be a phantom budget by a phantom set of incompetent individuals who beat their chest on a daily basis but are really criminals.
So something else I was watching that, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Concerning the Nikon plan, they were blocked. Dennis Rowley, you cut the ribbon for that?
Yeah, he cut the ribbon for that. He cut the ribbon for to broaden the road, the Valencia stretch between Valencia and the Toko main road. He cut the ribbon to, of course, start over the highway to Point Fortin. He just opened this one, but I noticed he cut the ribbon for the piece of road that fell into the swamp below, constructed by Jusamco, a company that was pouring concrete at Balize House. I noticed that. He opened that one and he talked about that one.
And before I go, I just want to upgrade a statement why here they make some live ago where say that the PNM have a kitchen cabinet. These people is a set of mad people. You don't call them medicine cabinet running there. It's a set of tablets and pills that inside there for sick people. Doctor and listening.
The only problem is that it is there not for storage. It's them taking it. It's them taking it. So a well placed, of course, analogy to describe these what I consider to be dysfunctional mal individuals who clearly their malcontents that they engage in order to deceive and to of course incite the anger of the people. That's what they are engaged in, and they have no qualms in doing that. But at the end of the day, as is the case with Tobago and is the case with the local government elections just completed, they are going to get the wrath that they deserve, and the people are going to take their own revenge. I'm hearing a noise, and I thought it was I saw a phone number come up. All right, good. Yes, indeed. Let me just take that one. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
All right, I ain't taking too long now.
Yes, no problem.
I just want to say, everybody know them guns is the same guns. Them guns and them more press conference and Heinz. All right,
yeah. I mean, it is ludicrous. It's a bunch of course, I like to call them hilarious comedians. You could get a good laugh. And they want to give Larry Joseph and Tommy Joseph, who I understand he's under the weather, but they'll be good substitute for them. It's a pile of jokers that find themselves in office and accidental on the one hand, and at the same time orchestrated by devilish and Luciferian conduct of a man who has spent all of his time to plot and to disingenuously and dishonestly usurp not just power not just authority, not just undermining the electoral process, but to raid the treasury of the country. Raid the treasury of the country. That's what they are about. It's not by accident he talks about, of course, getting the rich richer and the poor must depend on what falls off the table from the rich. That is the group of individuals that let's make it a little bigger. I want to make sure that the young people see them without any kind of visual impairment. Let's make them a little bigger. Let's make them a little bigger. That's the chief culprit. Chief culprit, young people. Chief culprit that is a bane and a impediment and a toxic element and component to your future. That's the Minister of Education, Dolly they call her. Now, of course, that is George Young. And there are others that I will be, of course, adding to this list. But these are the main culprits, of course. Al-Rari and so on. And I was making the point about OAS. And OAS, wise, for the first time, Rowley admitted that it started with Manning administration in terms of engagement, but he said they never give a contract. But it's the same company that Olio was going to give the contract. That's the big difference. OAS is not unknown to the PNM, but for political deception and self-aggrandizement and belief that somehow the people are stupid and they will not, of course, make the nexus. But for the first time, because the UNC has countered over the years and will continue so to do in their bellicose mood, taking on the propaganda, I wouldn't say juggernaut, but the propaganda deteriorating and undermining and and self-destructive propaganda machinery of the PNM. At one time, people would have accepted it, but in the early days, but the tolerance level of the people, as far as their propaganda and misinformation and disinformation and that combination, that matrix, have waned over time and has become obsolete and so rhetorical that people could now anticipate what they will say. As I said, I anticipated what he would have said at that time, because he has nothing to say, and he would say, like Manning, he would say they must say something, and that something is having nothing to say, because he regurgitated something that everybody established was a lie, and he continued so to do there as Prime Minister at this late stage of the game. That is the damage that these fellas are prepared to and they will get more desperate. Understand that. It's any port for a storm, because they know that blue lights and silver bracelet awaits them with the consent and the approbation of all of us. But let us conclude that situation with respect, of course, to OAS and Dr. Rowley's recent edition of the lies that he perpetrated since the campaign of the 2015 elections. So what has happened? The OAS headquarters in Brazil filed for bankruptcy protection, both in Brazil and in New York, emerging from a scandal in Brazil that even involved, of course, the former, and I think he got back into office, president of Brazil. But that is not the important thing and relevant to Trinidad. What Rowley and they do was to take that situation and bellow in Trinidad for their own political advantage, to get where they are today and cannot deliver, and facing criminal charges ultimately, because the entire cabinet must be brought to justice of Trinidad and Tobago, must be brought to justice. No doubt they are too blatant and obvious and conspicuous, but the point I'm making is that they filed for bankruptcy protection, meaning that they went to court to prevent people, their creditors, from pouncing on them and asking to give them this and give them that and take them to court, etc. So they went to court to prevent that from happening. Why is it Trinidad? The project was going ahead. They didn't need any money from Brazil to finish or to continue that project. As they worked, the government will pay, and therefore they will pay, of course, their suppliers locally and abroad, etc. And the project was supposed to have been completed at a particular time, if, of course, the UNC had not gotten out of office under these deceptive means of and by this PNM propagandists, incompetent and impotent and criminalistic and mafia enterprise called the PNM and led by Rowley. So what transpired? They filed for bankruptcy protection. But why say Rowley started to use that as an opportunity to say that they are bankrupt? So that you and I will feel that there is some justification for that kind of bellicose, or should I say aggressiveness against them, even though they were the company that the PNM itself had considered for that job. Yeah, Rowley confessed that on the last occasion. Of course, he didn't do that before, because he did not, of course, conveniently suited his agenda at the time. But now that the truth is coming out, he decides, of course, to mix the truth with, of course, the lies, and that is, of course, an innuendo, a misleading statement, of course, with an element of truth in it. So the PNM brought OAS. There was no question of bankruptcy as far as OAS is concerned, whether here in Trinidad when they were here or home. And in fact, I want to say that they are out of the bankruptcy protection scenario, because the courts both in Brazil and in New York is satisfied that they met all of the conditionalities. They paid their expenses and their creditors and so on, and now they are back on even keel as a international construction firm and engaged in other activities. They are out of it. Rowley still come and saying that these people were bankrupt, but I don't think that he mentioned bankruptcy. I have not looked at it, but from what my friend from Point said, it appears that he left out, of course, bankruptcy out of it, but talk about a clause. Now let's face it, a government in office, you as opposition can't tell them if they want to amend a clause or they want to make different arrangements in a particular contract. You're fast and out of place, because nobody tells you, when all of us have a duty and responsibility to show that you are so damn corrupt, incompetent and impotent, everything you touch, including the piece of highway that fell into the swamp. Our common sense will tell us that you ought not to have gotten into any contractual arrangement with Jusamco. After that, a subsidiary of Junior Sammy, but Junior Sammy is working all over the country. Nobody tells you that. That level of hypocrisy and that level of self-righteous indignation, and suddenly they are pious, and that they are impeccable, and that they are immaculate, is a fallacy. It's like the devil trying to correct sin. That is Rowley and they. So to say that a clause was taken out so that they get away, and get away with what? Who get away with what? You went, even though you knew that the UNC had put in a clause where they had to, of course, put up bonds, money in advance to get the contract. You went and take it. Your boss and say Young went all over the globe to get the money. You say you get it and you resume the construction of the highway. The OAS take it to court, arbitration. That is the agreement. That is how international contracts are constructed, and the players are protected. They went, of course, to England because the contract will have had that as well, saying that if we have a dispute, let's go to arbitration. You went to arbitration. NIDCO represented Trinidad. I have a copy of the initial arrangement. I have yet to get another copy of the conclusion. But when the verdict was against Trinidad and Tobago and the government to give back the $1 billion or more, and with interest, of course, I'm sure, to OAS, you find something in the local court. Nothing different to when, of course, ordinary people who would have invested in their monies and take out their little savings and involve their families' savings as well and their friends, and get a construction contract or a maintenance contract or a rehabilitation contract with the education facilities company, and you decide not to pay them. You decide not to pay them. And that is so even with the larger companies. When Short-Young came and said that 5 contractors in Trinidad and Tobago are engaged in cartel behavior, and they take them to court, all sealed and clandestine. You can't know what they're suing them for. And it's the same contractors, including Namalco and, of course, Calco, that are now doing jobs all over the place. And in fact, Calco is the one that got the $400 million highway to Manzanilla to nowhere. So they see in others that which is in them, and that they believe that amount of money must not be, of course, swollen or be manipulated or managed by anybody else but a corrupt P&M. That's what they're telling us. Let's not waste time with that kind of hogwash and deception and self-serving disposition. So let me say this. The local court has no jurisdiction in this matter, and I'm sure that OS has filed in that regard. The arbitration court, consistent with the agreement, the local court could say what they want. The fact is that the International Arbitration Tribunal that looked at the matter say that Trinidad and Tobago is owing OAS. So notice when he finished his statement, I read it before I came on so I can tell you. He said, well, if it is that at the end of the day Trinidad and Tobago had to pay OAS $1 billion, remember, it's UNC fault. That son of a gun, that son of a political kobo, a total predator in more ways than one, picking at the carcass of bare bone skeleton, looking for some kind of rescue from their incompetence, impotent and malicious conduct, profligate and wasting people's time and their monies. And you're telling us today that you're giving back laptops, but only for those who qualify. They're still conditionalizing it. I mean, come on. What kind of beast that we have collectively and individually in the office of Prime Minister and Cabinet and Government today in Trinidad and Tobago, at a time when we could least afford it, at a time when young people are taking up guns and they're training it at anybody, and when we tell them, well, listen, officials will be targeted, They laugh because they tell themselves that they are insulated because they will be in government forever. I want to tell them that that is a fallacy. You are going to get out of office by if not next year, the following year. For sure. And all you will be exposed for what you have done, because people like me will not forget what you all have done to the people. That group of individuals you see there that are coming up on the screen. I want the young people to see them so they know them. So make no mistakes about it. They are the ones that have jeopardized your future, and that they have emasculated and dispossessed you through denials of your parents to get those laptops, get proper school feeding program going, get proper programs going that were already there, that they say they came, of course, to augment and to improve, and it turns out to be total shambolic and chaos and distress and pain for the entire population. They could wallow in their fantasy as much as they can. The reality is clear. So, in summary, OAS will eventually get the $1 billion. Rowley just buying time, and there could be no clause that got them out of anything, because Rowley and them went and get the money that the UNC so prudently and so efficaciously and so deliberate in the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago protected us. If anything went wrong, and it was Rowley and they that unraveled the entire arrangement, because he wants to be in office that he is not capable of managing, and undeserving. Let us not waste time and compile a bunch of similarly avarice and criminal-minded individuals, whether male or female, to loosely and summarily and wickedly and destructively manage our affairs. And we must see them for what they are. Tobago has already done. He from Tobago has already done their part. We must now do our part nationally. And Tobago, of course, still have another bite of the cherry in 2025 maximum. And if before, similarly, because we are seeing all overtures that within the PNM there seem to be a burgeoning and intensity of those who have maybe some modicum of moral and ethical a pillar within their beings to stand up to Rowley and that bunch of miscreants that he has put together. And I'm sure that is what is causing him much pain. Like he's sleeping on stinging nettle these days. You hardly see him and so on. When that is happening, it means that you have very little. And of course, whether you like it or not, he has to talk to Gary Griffith as part of that team that would be assembled by Cameron. Otherwise, no talk. But trying to take moral high ground after shifting the goalposts. They said that a team, they never said what it's comprised of, whether it's parliamentarians or not. He suddenly changed it and say it must be parliamentarians, and he must have 5 parliamentarians, and of course the opposition must have 4, because he wants an unfair advantage. That is the kind of criminal mind that he has. I don't know who advising he, but it takes very little for him, of course, to reach that level of evil and criminality. I don't think he needs advice, having regard, of course, to what he did in 1969 when he raped Miss Allen, being a teacher. Most despicable. And you have the audacity to come on this live and defend that. Well, they're wicked to all yourself. Well, they're evil. And birds of feather flock together. So I could imagine what you're doing at home and what you're doing with your family those of you who would want to defend that indefensible state of affairs. Now, people, of course, we have come to the end. It's already what's the time? The time is, oh yeah, we have about 9 more minutes. So of course we can of course continue to look at certain things. I promised that I would put together the guns and so on that was found. Let me just see if I still kept it on, because I had it last night. Let me see if it is still on. But of course there are certain things that you need to know as well of this government, because they're simply evil. Of course, it's prepared to undermine our democratic principles and our democratic process. Let's look at him when he tried, of course, to, with his minuscule and tenuous and emaciated number in the parliament, only 22 seats, went in with 23 in the 2020 general elections, and come out with 22, and playing as though he get 27 or a landslide. I mean, the man is simply mad for power, but power intoxicates and make men giddy, and he could play as much drunk man as he wants. But I also know that power corrupts, and since he wants to arrogate unto himself absolute power, that absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that is something the Trinidad and Tobago population will never countenance or subject themselves to, and that you could put in a pipe and smoke it. Let's go straight, of course, to when he tried, of course, the consequence of trying to, of course, undermine our democracy and the right for us to vote. Listen to what the Privy Council said to him. Yes, indeed.
That a change in the length of the terms of office of the incumbent councillors and aldermen did not amount to a contravention or breach of any provision.
Lie again in our faces in Parliament.
This decision, studiously arrived at, did not prevent some of my colleagues in this House and some elements in the media from continuing to accuse the government of Trinidad and Tobago of breaching the constitutional rights of citizens. To this accusation, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the government pleads not guilty.
The election of representatives for a fixed or maximum period is the foundation on which a democratic society is built. It is inimical to a representative democracy that the representatives are chosen by anyone other than the electorate.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the government pleads not guilty.
The election of representatives for a fixed or maximum period is the foundation on which a democratic society is built. It is inimical to a representative democracy that the representatives are chosen by anyone other than the electorate. If the relevant amendments were to apply to incumbent representatives, the effect would be that the government, rather than the electorate, had chosen those representatives for another year.
And that is clear. It's clear. The Privy Council said so. And at the end of it, in an attempt to boldfacedly but try to salvage some kind of authority, when in fact he should be hanging himself in shame, the entire government, he then tells us at the end of it all, listen to what he says.
It is abundantly clear that the government has no choice but to accept the ruling of the Privy Council.
Listen again. Sorry about that. Yes, indeed. Let me just make sure that we have it. Yes, let's play it again.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, all 5 judges of the Privy Council decided that a change in the length of the terms of office of the incumbent council.
Trying to use semantics to change the configuration and the expressed decision of the Privy Council. All 5 judges. What nonsense he talking about? There was no breach of the Constitution. You try to take away our right to vote, and you say there's no breach. You're kind of madman or something. Listen to him, and he seemed to be doing that gleefully. And when he should be hanging himself in shame, all of them, for coming with their tenuous 22 and make a decision to postpone the local government elections until December. We wouldn't have had any elections if it wasn't for if as far as they are concerned, but because of the astuteness of the opposition and the tenacity and their forthright and their commitment to democracy and the rule of law, and of course the electoral process, which of course gave rise to Rowley and them believing that somehow they could utilize our money willy-nilly, helter-skelter, abusively. We haven't, of course, voted in 2020 and 2015, and then in between there believe that they are there on their own volition because they have some kind of devilish right to rule, but really and truly engage in criminal behavior, which is misbehavior in public office, corruption and nepotism, and manipulate the institutions that are supposed to protect us from them or people like them by giving them some kind of special consideration because they would have stayed in office for too long and they have developed friends and a level of mediocrity across the government spectrum, and believe that he could go, of course, to the EBC and talk to, of course, the family of Kofi, and talk, of course, to the Integrity Commission members, and talk, of course, to the Police Service Commission members, and talk to the president, so as to pursue a course of action that is so anti-democratic that in any other country that has a respect for the law and feel offended by that kind of conduct, string them up if it was another country. You saw what happened in Sri Lanka. They invaded, of course, the president's residence and bathed in the blasted swimming pool. First they were fed up and disgusted with that level of manipulation of one family. But in this case, the family, comparatively speaking to what transpired in Sri Lanka, is the PNM. It's a family of wrongdoers, and they want to stay in our faces and believe that we are so damn stupid. No, we have a corridor transformation, we have a ground report, we have, of course, Alan Roberts, we have, of course, Victor Roberts and others who are prepared to defend our democracy to the hilt, and they could say what they want, that'll kill all of us. And like shaka, they can't make. More they try, more will come. Let's hear what the Privy Council had to say.
Is the foundation on which a democratic society.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the government pleads not guilty.
Guilty as hell. Listen to the Privy Council.
The election of representatives for a fixed or maximum period is the foundation on which a democratic society is built. It is inimical to a representative democracy that the representatives are chosen by anyone other than the electorate. If the relevant amendments were to apply to incumbent representatives, the effect would be that the government, rather than the electorate, had chosen those representatives for another year. If the relevant amendments were to apply to incumbent representatives, the effect would be that the government, rather than the electorate, had chosen those representatives for another year. Local government elections should have been held by March this year. Local government elections should have been held by March this year.
I want to make it abundantly clear that the government has no choice but to accept the ruling of the Privy Council.
You're sure right. You're sure right. And these are the people who went into the parliament with their 22 tenuous majority and tried to postpone local government elections until December. And while we did not get the knockout punch, But I think it is sufficient that over 60,000 persons more voted for the UNC and the NTA than that of the PNM should send a serious message to them. But they will not learn. We have to grind them into the ground. We have to discredit them. We have to mercilessly pursue them. And we have to let the international community, the regional community know what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago and the failures and the contempt and the tragedy that is, of course, government in Trinidad and Tobago by this group of individuals. Let's go to the lines. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Good night, Lennox.
Good night.
I'm say roll, yeah? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Rowley and them and the Pol Pot one saying bring back the old time days, right? So
Yeah.
here what's going on. So here what's going on. We had to get Pol Pot, we had to get bikes and donkey cattle, whatever you call this thing, right?
Yeah.
But here what? But then roll, let them get with all the cars and thing now, and the touchscreen phone and thing too.
Yeah, that's all.
You ain't fine, so Lennox?
Yeah, that's all. That's
They
all.
want to bring back the old time days. Get rid of all them things what they have.
That's right. That's right.
And $14 million painting and let your children draw something on a paper and stick it in your wall.
That's right. That's right. That's
I
right.
think about all Lennox.
I
They want to bring back the old time days.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I will not be averse to that. I will not be averse to that at all. Yeah.
Okay, Lennox. Good night and thanks.
Yes.
Thanks to the PNM people and them who want Pol Pot.
I hear
And
you.
bicycle.
I hear you. I hear
Okay,
you.
Lennox.
Yes, I hear you. I
Be
hear
going
you.
forward. Lennox, be going forward.
That's right.
And
That's
the
right.
PNM supporters, remember where it is.
Yes, yes, I
Go
agree
back
with
to the
you.
old time days.
Yes,
Don't
indeed.
take us all the toilet bowl and all of the action from now.
All
And
right.
the old time days.
I hear you.
Okay, Lennox, good night and thanks.
Yes, indeed, yes, indeed, yes, indeed, yes, indeed. We have some very dynamic and very enthusiastic, of course, callers that speak their mind, and that is what this is all about. And as I said, to those of you who are a bit timid, don't be. We on this program, whether it's green verb, yellow verb, whatever it is, once we can understand what you're saying, that is what matters to us. But of course, I think in the spirit of comedy, in the spirit of hilariousness, in the spirit of recognizing how stupid these people are, I think, of course, we can of course, give ourselves the license to, of course, introduce this entertainer who is a bit of a comedian himself, but I think he has a story because he calls himself a madman. So I think it's important here. Let's go. Yes, indeed. Let me see what's happening. Oh yeah, sorry about that. Let me just bring it on.
So the whole of the country wants you know to stop lying. Cause the next election, then are you party we voting? Like you forget your people, once you in power, and you move is evil, you had the whole place sour. And now that we discover, it's 2% that they offer. This is one little thing that I want all you to remember. We fed up all your lives. You could do much better. Gas prices going up too high. The cost of living is getting harder. Guys, never watching the popular dream. I don't own the rights of the music played. Like the melody, I'm a madman.
These are the people who are causing all of that. These are the people. Yes, indeed. These are the people that are causing all of that. So, people, I think we had a wonderful time tonight. Is already.
Testing 1 2 1 2. Is this?
Yes, indeed. Of course, we have had a wonderful time tonight. Yes, I know you want more and more and more, but of course, as bad things come to an end, well, good things as well. But of course, with good things, you are more edified, more satisfied, and motivated to contribute with bad things such as Rowley and his bunch, certainly you are pessimistic. You are in a state of perpetual shock, dismay, and self-pity. All of those emotions would come about. Why these fellas pile on the pressure and go home and sleep comfortably simply because they can line their pockets at will at our expense. No more must that happen. 30 pieces of silver ministers must be a thing of the past as we take over to, of course, engage in serious development, human development, material development, economic development, social development, increase, of course, productivity, and making certain that there's a place in Trinidad and Tobago for our children when we would have departed or whilst we are here. That is the imperative of a government. But they have, of course, lost their morals and their moral and ethical right to be a government. And that therefore they are in a shambolic state of affairs, and that they are so toxic and so putrid that no one should ever consider them for electoral politics or elections in this country. They are simply toxic and evil. So that being as it may, people, these are the people that we must target, and we must make them know how we feel about them. I think we have exhausted, of course, the topic on OAS, which I wanted to address, and the question of the government willingness to undermine our democracy in more ways than one, and the fact that they continue, of course, to boast of a budget that really and truly is a superfluous, superficial presentation of their very, should I say, prolific, pernicious, wicked, diabolical imagination, because it has no relations with either the economic building blocks that would have caused, of course, for example, the Treasury to have additional money in the Heritage and Civilization Fund, but it was because of the war between Ukraine and Russia. But they will not tell us that. That's how deceptive and deceitful they are. And of course, Rowley tell the continuing lies about OAS and that situation on the UNC. Not for the first time, not for the second time, but he continues to do that, believing that somehow it has that the potency of that has not been exhausted. He told us that in 2015, and people, of course, either believed or, like me, was in doubt until I did my own investigation and know for sure that it was a blatant and unadulterated lie. That con man, that dishonest man, with a dishonest group of people around him, all of them, including, of course, Penny and all of them, since you could associate with that Brian Manning, etc., because birds of feather flock together, and you are there for a piece, for 30 pieces of silver. I think you have betrayed the people, and from that perspective alone, you are undeserving of anybody's consideration. Blue lights and silver bracelets await as soon as the UNC gets into government. I would expect that, and I would insist on that, as the corridor transformation will be here irregardless. So people, of course, we have come to the end of tonight's exercise. I want to, of course, see if I can somehow recognize some of you. I see Inchan is there on YouTube. On the Facebook page, I'm not seeing the contributors. I'm not seeing the contributors, and I'm going to leave it alone because I have to get familiar with the system. But of course, I would love to say that is about money worries first and foremost.
I'm on the worries, I'm on the trouble. Anywhere you go, it's the same price. I'm on the worries, I'm on the worries. Anywhere you go, I'm on the worries, I'm on the worries.
Yes indeed, yes indeed. And of course, well, we will not relent. So, here come of course, Bali and Shaka Shaka.
Shaka, talk to me. In a happy family. Tell me when you're hitting one.
Yes, indeed.
Better you hit all and done. Now when I look at South Africa and the pain my race go through, lions smitten by the bogus matter. Oh my God, I moan, cause I know they hit me too. Shaka, shaka, tell them when they lash my brother.
Yes, I.
Tell them that they hitting all a we. Shaka, shaka, when they make we children suffer. Tell them, they'll answer to all a we. For we have family, one blood, one soul, to see all people free, one task, one goal. Shaka, shaka, tell them if they touch Mandela. Tell them, they better hit all a we.
Look down there. Hit all of us. Yes, indeed. Boy. All right, let me see if I could deal with this. Just a minute. Let me just pause this. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Final call.
Lennox lifestyle. Lennox hairstyle.
Yeah.
See that song today and then Shaka Shaka?
Yeah.
You know, I remember when I was small, my father heard the song, he used to be crying.
Yes.
The
Because
same song?
yeah.
I used to be crying and he heard the song enough.
Well, it is relevant today.
I just remember my father enough. I never heard the song.
Yeah, it is relevant today because we need everybody on board to challenge this group of vipers that has taken over government in this country.
Okay,
yes.
Lennox, good
Yes.
night.
Good night to you, of course.
Marching against apartheid. While Canadian youth protest. chest. Now my people, let's all join the struggle. Show your solidarity. From the US to Caribbean people, Africans must know, apartheid must go, or we never will be free. Shaka, shaka, tell them if they lash we brother. Tell them that they hitting all of we. Shaka, shaka, when they make we children suffer. Tell them, they'll answer to all of we. For we are family. One blood, one soul. To see our people free. One task, one goal. Shaka, shaka, tell them if they touch Mandela. Tell them, they better hit all of we.
Oh, yes, indeed. So true. And of course, we could only conclude a Sunday night live on the Corridor Transformation with our Sunday theme song. We must, of course, pay homage to the deity that, of course, caused us to have breath and to make this program possible and to have you, of course, viewing in at this time. Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. And don't forget tomorrow morning, the ground report. I have to find a way to get the names of the people on both YouTube and the Facebook in one place so that I can mention some of you in my usual closing remarks. But that being as it may, let's go straight, of course, to our religious medley that will take us out, and have a wonderful rest of the night. Don't forget tomorrow morning, Andy, Mikey and myself on the ground report, and of course tomorrow night we return, and hopefully bigger, better and more expansive. Thank you very much for viewing tonight.
Hallelujah.